Oh, it's getting real now. I gotta push the got it button. Oh, it's getting real now. I gotta push the got it button.
Uh-oh.
It was
Deja
real.
vu. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm just popping out the YouTube chat. We're gonna have a Q&A session. Um, and we'll probably talk about some odds and ends. And briefly, I wanted to start off the conversation by talking about multiple ways to rank a page. And I think it's something that I teach a lot, but I don't talk a lot about. Um, so the thing that I think that a lot of people uh, kind of overlook, like they start reading blogs, and I'm going to get to our sponsors in a bit. I'm going to do it mid show instead of beginning show. I'm just mixing it up a little. um I think what a lot of people are uh inclined to think is that their favorite expert has the best working method. Like, I think that's kind of the psychology of what we see in the SEO space. My favorite guru has the best techniques. Um, and I think that by and large, all of them have a kernel of truth in what they're saying, or there was at least a kernel of truth at a point in time. Like, if you get outdated advice, then, it may have worked at the time, it might not work now. But I think by and large, anyone with a reputation to ruin is going to try and give you good advice because they don't want to ruin their reputation. So I think that's kind of like the fundamental force of SEO gurus is they're honestly trying, and their audiences are very, I guess, aggressive, defensive about their favorites. And so what that means is it turns into a lot of tit for tat. No, my expert says this, so you're wrong because my expert's better than your expert. And, it's kind of an extension of my daddy's better than your daddy politics. We see that all the time in actual politics too. If you ever say something bad about somebody's political party, they view it as you insulted their daddy because that's their daddy's politics and their daddy's the best daddy in the world. So how dare you comment on a political party? That's, how dare you insult my daddy? Same thing happens in SEO. And so we have these, like, these social layers of nuance with SEO advice. And what gets lost in all of that is they can all be right in part or in whole at the same time. Believe it or not, uh, somebody's method can work while my method also works. And so there can be multiple correct answers to a system like search engine rankings. And as evidence of that, I'll point out, and then we'll start the discussion. I'll point out that, one way to rank a page is with 36 linear feet of vertical scrolling, the skyscraper. That's keywords throughout, high amount of topical relevancy, high match counts, tons of entities, tons of LSI. But then I see that data in a Quora report, and I'm like, I'm not going to add 30,000 words to my page. That's crazy. And I know from testing that I can beat that skyscraper with a 2,000 word article at a much higher keyword density, because that's another way to rank a page. And then somebody else will come along with a loosely relevant page, and they'll throw an overinvestment of backlinks at it. Why? Because that's another way to rank a page. And at this point, Terry Samuels and Clint Butler have both ranked blank pages for real keywords using nothing but schema. Why? Because that's another way to rank a page. And then you'll see sites like Yelp get in there and they have all this geolocation signal, industry and geo entities. And they have like an entity density play. Why? Because that's another way to rank a page. And so, there's just this notion that there's one best way, one right way. I'd start this conversation off by saying, I think it's a score. Your ranking score is a number between 0 and 1, and it's a high precision floating point number that's from the Google patents, and they sort it descending. And there's lots of ways to impact your score. What do you think about these notions?
Well, I think you're right, because ultimately everything that Google crawls on page, off page, all that shit has to factor into a number so that they can say this page is better than that page, the score. So if we take the notion that there's 200 factors in the algorithm, we don't know what they are, how many there are, but say there's 200. You're going to have some are yes, no. Do you have this or don't you? Some of them are quantity, like how many backlinks, number of backlinks, or quality of backlinks. So, all of these different things that can go in there. So when you look and say, all right, how does this page score on these 200 attributes? There's an infinite number of ways to get a score. And so, the way that we see this and we talk about it just conceptually is, hey, I got a blank page, but it's got schema, and that schema has keywords, and it has this and it has that, and therefore with all the tabulations, hey, it scored well and it ranked well. It could be ranked number 1 or wherever. And you're like, how can that happen? Well, because it checked enough boxes at a high enough quantity that its score ranked it. So I think it's funny to hear people's notions of it. They'll get fixated on one part of it. My schema is killer, and none of these other sites that's ranking ahead of me has the type of schema that I have. I'm like, but that's just one set of numbers that you're satisfied. You could have the best in the world, but maybe they have better on page, or maybe they have better backlink profile, or maybe they have, all these other attributes that you don't have, or that you're lacking. You're not scoring quite as high. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think people just get fixated on, here's a trick, or here's a technique, or here's a, it's all about, the entities. And if you do this with the entities and that sort of thing, it's like, yeah, I don't use any of that entity crap. I just use keyword density, or I just use schema, or I just use backlinks. You hear a lot of people, I don't give a shit about the on-page stuff. I just go and I get some links in the following ways, and boom, I always rank. It's not a problem. They found a way to satisfy the score that beats the competition for the keywords that they're going after. So I think it's spot on, but I think it's short-sighted to anybody that thinks that this is the one way or even the best way, because it would be hard to test optimizing what's truly the best way or most efficient way without knowing the 200 factors and their weights.
And that's exactly right. Like, the only way you could establish best is by first establishing the efficiency, because the best one ultimately is the one that gets you there with the least effort and cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not looking at efficiency of methodologies, then you have no idea what's best.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. What do you think, Charles?
I was going to say, I think by our nature, we're all kind of looking for the shortcut, for the easy button. And if you think back to, what was it, 10, 12 years ago in SEO, you could just over-optimize one factor. You could get that score that Lee was talking about by just sending links or just doing keywords over and over again. But with the new, was it the MC4 algorithm, or MC4-like algorithm that Google has, they're looking for diversity. But you still can fundamentally say, all right, if there's 200, 2,000 factors, if you can get this group done, you're good. You've done what you need to do. As long as your competitors have done that -1, you're good. And I think the only thing we don't want to, I don't want folks to think, and I don't think anyone is suggesting this, is that you can't do just one or two factors and get the score anymore. That doesn't work anymore. But you can get 50 of the 200, maybe. Now that's just a number I'm making.
Yeah.
You can get 50 of the factors in that work, as long as everyone else is using 49 or 48 of the factors.
And I think you're exactly right. I think the big mistake in SEO is neglecting categories of ranking signals. So you have people out there that say, oh, I don't do off page, or oh, I don't do schema, or, you know, I'm afraid to use too many variations. You know, if you're neglecting a category of signal, I think you are running afoul of Google's diversity requirements and ranking signals. And I think that is very likely a first order sort on the results is factor diversity. I think you get punished when you don't have it.
You know, I don't know, because you know I'm a huge proponent of factor diversity, but one of the things I don't know, if you just take the straight, there's 200 factors and, you know, you get a score for each one of them. Well, the more factors you use, just automatically you're going to have higher scores because you're checking more boxes. So is it the diversity, or is it that you're giving yourself more scoring opportunities? You know, is it that they're looking at how many, or is it when we start to optimize these other factors and more factors, we tend to do a better job so it gets a higher score? So, you know, we've never done a test where let's optimize for all 200 factors, let's say, but let's just get one of whatever it is. The absolute minimum that you could get, does that score well? Because then, you know, it would be diversity as the driver, as opposed to just, you know, scoring on more factors.
So I stumbled into that diversity idea years ago when I was running a test for dates on a page. And I wanted to see, I was throwing different types of dates on a page. I'd put past dates, future dates, all kinds of stuff. And I tried putting a future date on one of the pages, and it dropped in the rankings. It dropped to the bottom of the list. And my first thought was, oh my God, Google has a negative, you know, as a penalty against that. And then I realized, no, that date's invalid because it's not a real date yet. And Google said, okay, of all the pages, this page doesn't have that factor. So it has one less checkbox, one less point than everybody else, and it dropped to the bottom. As soon as that date came around, it went right back up. It wasn't number one, but it was near the top. It got that factor suddenly. So I realized that was around the time, Ted, you started talking about MC4. And I was like, huh, that's what Google's doing when it's punishing sites. It's just ignoring factors, and that's why you drop. It's not a penalty, it's a filter. Which I've heard Google talk about years ago in their a lot of their conferences and stuff. Like, oh no, we don't have penalties, we have filters. And I never quite understood that until I started looking at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, filter sounds better. Same as
that too. It's easier. It's better PR.
Also, does it help you feel better, Ted? You didn't drop because you got penalized. We just filtered you. Does that make you feel better?
But
it's so much better. Totally saved my job.
The difference between a filter and a penalty is you can undo a filter. You can go in and change your date, diversify your factors, and you will pop back up. Look at duplicate content. Once you're not duplicate, you immediately pop back up.
Filters don't require forgiveness. And that's exactly what we tend to see with the MC4 stuff. The reason why we keep doubling down on MC4 is the Quora community shared data for over the past 2 years have pegged all of the diversity factors at the top of the list. So they're just the strongest factors in SEO, hands down. And the reason most SEOs don't know about it is most SEO tools can't measure it. And the other reason we really like it is because getting stuck with this algorithm is reversible. And so typically, it's the most common problem in SEO. And I don't know why, but SEOs won't talk about the most common problem in SEO. And it's that thing where you tune your page and you go up in the rankings, you tune it a little more, you go up a little more, you tune it again, it doesn't move, you tune it 50 more times and it never moves again. Sound familiar? And that is what getting stuck with MC4 feels like. And I'm going to prove it's the most common story. So all you agency SEOs out there, how many times have you heard something like this? Yeah, we used to have an SEO. It was going great for a while. Then it kind of all stopped working. So we had to let him go. And now we're here talking to you. That's the MC4 story. And nobody talks about this because it's the most common problem. So obviously we have to like pretend it doesn't exist. But it's reversible. And that's the thing, is we found that adding signal diversity is a much better solution in these cases than detuning your pages and disavowing your backlinks and doing link removal requests and pruning your content. All of those remedies that the SEO groups are preaching every time you have a problem are the wrong answer for an MC4 demotion. You got to add signal diversity. You got to think about the levers you haven't been pulling and pull those instead. Because when you add diversity, you get full credit for everything you've done. And it comes back to the most important question in SEO. If they can do it, why can't I? You know, that's the most important question in SEO. And it turns out there's a reason why they can and you can't. So there is a reason. And it looks like that reason is factor diversity. So the reason websites for the games keyword can use 3,000 exact matches on a page that visually has no text is because they have good signal diversity. They have everything to offer. If I do that on a brand new page without all those signals, it's not going anywhere. And the funny thing is the cure, when you add the right amount of diversity, and it's on one of those pages where the SEO got fired, the last days of that SEO before they got fired, they were scrambling to make the needle move. They threw everything at the problem, and it didn't work because they were stuck with the algorithm. Then this customer comes in my door and says, yeah, it was working great for a while, but it all stopped working. Then I know, oh, I need to start with signal diversity and get them unstuck. And you know what happens? All that past work where that guy was scrambling and then got fired, that was good SEO. It shoots to the moon. And so I get the credit for that SEO's good work. And this is part of the reason why I've changed my thought on SEO. I largely don't believe in bad SEO anymore. And, you know, it's out there, but it's extremely rare. What we're actually seeing, given all this new information, is that it's not bad SEO, it's incomplete. Yeah. It's not in enough areas. It's not enough of some things. It's incomplete. And when you can see the parts, the areas where you're incomplete, that kind of changes everything. And so it's not that you're doing bad SEO, it's that you're not doing complete SEO, and you need to think about completeness.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the, you know, the where you started, which is, you know, my guru, their method is X and it always works, but right now, you know, it's not working. And usually it's like either I'm mad because this person doesn't know what they're doing, they sold me a bunch of crap or whatever else, or, you know, damn Google, they changed the rules and now they're targeting Guru X because, you know, he figured out the whole thing, you know. But ultimately, it's if Google tweaks the weights, which is what an algorithm changes, they tweak the weights on the variables, and all of a sudden all the stuff that I'm doing gets, pushed down, demoted a little bit in terms of power, and other things which I don't have get pushed up, you're right, it's incomplete. But we don't want to look and think that we're doing part of the solution. We want to think that we had that easy button, that this method always worked. And it does until it doesn't. And then you don't have an answer because you think that's all there is. The handful of things that you play with, and we all have our favorites, the handful of things that you play with is no longer working. I cannot get that page, that's stuck in position 8 to move up, or position, 44 to move up. It just won't move no matter what I do.
Right there, that statement you said, the thing I'm doing won't work for my page. Because the question that the people aren't asking is, the thing you're doing to rank your page, is it working for somebody else's page, and why?
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the thing, you can't just say it doesn't work for my page, therefore it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Like that's looking at the problem in a vacuum and not looking at the whole landscape and all the occurrences of the problem.
And you hear all the variations of that sort of thing. Look, I have more content than anybody else. I have 15,000 words. My next nearest competitor has 6,000. Clearly, I'm better. How are these people beating me? And it's like, who said that was the only freaking factor to compete on? Yeah. And then you hear other variations of it. I looked, the tool that I use to score my page gives my content an 85, and nobody else is above a 75, and yet they're all ranking ahead of me. I was like, well, who told you that scoring an 85 on this particular tool is all you needed to do? They're like, well, but it always worked before. I'm like, so why isn't it working now? What's different? It's Google, it's the tool, it's, no, it's an incompleteness in your thinking about what the algorithm contains.
Well, think of how many people are wandering around now. I mean, you hear that with links, well, links don't work anymore. Exact match anchor text doesn't work. How many people are saying that and espousing that as like that's the gospel? And it's not that they don't work anymore. It's you now need that diversity. Whereas again, 10, 12 years ago, I could pound the heck out of a page with anchor text links and I'd rank. And even, the whole click here example or the miserable failure example, like those things, you're a ranking page that didn't even have the word on the page. Can't do that anymore. But that doesn't mean links don't work. It just means you need that diversity. You need those other factors. Google's gotten a little more sophisticated to say, I'm not just looking for X number of points. I'm looking for X number of points and X number of boxes checked.
Yeah.
Whatever that number would be.
And you still can with those sort of anchor texts. It's just harder.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't work as smoothly as it once did.
And I think a lot of SEOs don't realize that when your website goes up after a Google update, that's usually an indication that you're missing factors. You have gaps in your SEO. And same thing if it goes down. So if you imagine an algorithm as a shifting of the coefficients of each factor, the weighting of each factor, then you could imagine if Google says, oh, in this update, we're going to make backlinks weaker and exact matches stronger. And if you go up, it's really an indication of which one you had and which one you didn't. And if you go down, same thing, which one you had, which one you didn't. Mm-hmm. So either up or down after a major Google update, it's usually an indication that you have incompleteness in your SEO. Because over the past 6 years, what we've really learned about completeness of SEO is you don't notice the updates. You just coast through, because when they make the backlinks 20% weaker and the exact match 20% stronger, we had both. We just kind of sail through. The only reason I know about updates anymore is because it slows down indexing and the processing of new content and changes and Carolyn's work. Mm-hmm. So, Carolyn, we don't have you here every week. What's the state of indexing?
Well, it just happened, right?
And tell us.
Well, no, just the mobile-friendly testing tool.
Oh, the retiring of it?
Yeah, it didn't actually disappear that I could find. Didn't disappear until yesterday, where you would click on the result insert. If you search for mobile friendly tool.
Well,
Mhm.
I have a mostly hate and the love-hate relationship with it because that tool lied to me endlessly about problems I never had.
Yeah. I never used it for that.
It'll also tell you that things are just fine when they're really not just fine.
Yeah. But I get you. There are other things that people used it for. They'd use it for indexing. They'd use it for other signals. They'd use it for spying on people's cloaked SEO techniques. There's a number of things that these tools are used for. They can even be gateways for denial of service. So it's another channel in a denial of service attack.
I know that's your favorite.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of ways that people can use third-party gateways, whether they're web-lint or mobile friendly, or various things where you put in a page, the web server goes to the page, does an analysis, tells you an outcome. Those things are they're hazardous because people can use them as attack vectors. So you gotta get the recaptchas on those and lock them down. So what's the state of indexing? How bad is it right now?
I I still think it comes down to how you ask. I think a lot of this probably is a way for them to narrow down that doorway where new content gets taken in. And it's behaving kind of like that, and in other ways, they have all the developer documents that say, if you're doing it this way, you need X and Y, and I'm finding out you really don't. So it's just, there's a lot to look at. There's a lot going on. And
Are you implying that Google's documentation is inaccurate?
I would say, yes, I am saying that.
Blasphemy.
I
Kick her
know.
off the show, Ted.
Yeah, we have a question on the topic of diversity, and it's, how would you define signal diversity? One or two examples would be appreciated. I'll tell you exactly how I define it, and most of the Quora community uses it. There are primarily 4 buckets of diversity that we measure and take action on. That doesn't mean there aren't more buckets for diversity out there. But first and foremost is factor diversity. So the number of zones of a page you're kind of using, that type of thing. Then there's entity diversity. So for your on-topic entities, the entities that would come up conversationally about your keyword, do you have the complete collection? So think of them as Pokemon cards. It's not about having the most of each. It's about having the most complete collection. Same thing with LSI. LSI and entities are the same thing. They're just acquired through different means. And we do both because it gives you a more complete answer. And then referring domains. So your diversity of sources you accrue authority from.
Mhm.
And so those are the 4 buckets where we currently pull diversity, and that those 4 buckets can contain thousands of things, so it's not a small problem. And what you typically find with diversity is you're hunting for zeros.
Yeah.
How would you define it, Lee?
I think, conceptually, when I'm explaining it to people, it's different factors you have. Like, I think of it in terms of yes, no, because it's not all just yes, no, but it's easier to think about it. Do you have, links to a page? Do you have images on the page? Are you using, all of the entities associated with the topic? Are you, do you have alt text, on your images? Do you have a privacy policy, on your site? It's like check, 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 check. The more of these things that you have, and you can break them down like Cora does. There's combinations of keywords, variations in all sorts of different spots on your page, different tags in the HTML. Do you have them there? Yes or no? And there's also an element of, how much do you have as well. But if you start to think about it that way, if you have no schema and Google is just turns up the knob and says, man, schema is going to be 50% of the score, you're screwed. That's kind of the way to think about it. Now, they don't push it up, any particular factor up quite that high, but that's a good way of thinking about it. What you were talking about earlier, links and exact match. They've turned exact match down and links up. Okay, so everybody that's got links, has gotten a boost from their thing. Everybody that was relying on exact match now just got demoted, unless you had links as well.
Yep.
It's a great way of thinking about it. So it's, all the different places. How many of the 200, if you knew all 200, how many of the 200 do you have?
Exactly. And let's see, I think now's a good time to mention our sponsors. So let me go ahead and do that. And gotta share the slide. All right. So Magic PR, sorry if you missed out on the Black Friday special. He held it open as long as he could. But now we're back to normal pricing. And I know some people got amazing amounts of press releases. So congratulations, Madge. I've talked to a few people. They're excited to get going. They're really looking forward to the year. So I take it you had a pretty good Q4 based on the feedback I heard.
Yes, a lot of people decide to take advantage of the Black Friday. They always do every year. And yeah, we're bogged down with the amount of work we've got to do. But hopefully December will calm a little down so we can break up for Christmas and everything. But then back at it in January. But we've got some exciting things coming in Jan. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Very cool.
Nice.
All right. And the other thing I want to mention that's coming up is SEO spring training. All right. That's Terry Samuel's conference. And as I mentioned earlier, Terry Samuels was the first person to rank a blank page with schema. Clint Butler was number 2 to verify Terry's work. Yeah, this is an amazing conference. Secrets like that come out. So be sure to check it out if you're interested. If you need a tax write-off, this is a good one to get in before tax time. So this is a great way to get that write-off too, because you get knowledge that helps you grow. So if you're in a place where you kind of need the expense and you want to grow from the expense, this is a great way to do it. So conferences are awesome for that type of use. So if you're paying your taxes and you don't have enough business expenses, maybe think about a conference. You'll get to meet people and learn stuff. What do you think, Lee?
I love conferences. The conferences, you can learn stuff from the speakers, but the real thing is, just interacting with other SEOs, not just the speakers. You can find people sitting in the audience that know more than all the speakers combined. There's some amazing people that show up to these things that you can sit down and talk SEO and learn some things and make some connections. I've seen a lot of business connections that have been made at conferences. Just an amazing place to connect to more than just the normal group that we hang around with. So
Yeah. And so, the way I view it is you can invest in your business, or you can have more profits and give it to the government in taxes. You're going to pay either way. So you're just choosing where the money goes at that point. So I would say invest in your business if at all possible.
So Ted, quick question for you. You mentioned earlier, if you pay taxes, is there something you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, with the guy from Fox. I'm just
we have a
Do I have a
global
scoop?
audience, so if it was a U.S. audience, you'd be right. But people in other nations, they don't have the same tax requirements.
Oh,
I also heard Charles say "roll camera" before he asked the question.
Yeah, I thought I got a scoop here.
Well, and the other thing is, there's a lot of SEOs that live month to month. So if you don't have profit, you're probably getting a refund. So, but you don't need more expenses if you're in that boat. So
Indeed.
if you can't afford a conference, don't go to a conference. It needs to make sense to be worthwhile. But
Right.
They are amazing events, and you can learn a lot in them, but you should not forego your rent check or something to go to a conference. That's not good. All right. So let's see. So Honey says, I think the issue is they discovered a how, but they don't know the why a method works. So how it works and why it works.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you're like, schema's working, so that's the magic elixir, and they don't understand why it works. So they don't know how to use that properly, and then when it doesn't work because Google's adjusted the dials, they don't know why it no longer works.
Yeah, I guess shaking the tree is why is how the apples fell, but gravity is why they fall. So yeah, the how the apples fell and the why they fell. Yeah, deep concept and true. I view SEOs as like Isaac Newton, and we're trying to understand fundamental forces. So a lot of SEOs are out there talking string theory in SEO, and I'm like, no, we haven't figured out friction. We haven't figured out gravity.
Right.
And so yeah, I like to see the science where we figure out fundamental forces of things, and that's often why our tests are so ridiculous. That's why we'll put 1 million words on a page, and it's why Lee put 250,000 words in a title tag. Those are explorations into fundamental behaviors. They're absolutely ridiculous. Like I wrote a test is like, if we change the keyword a page is tuned for once a second, what happens? Those are fundamental force explorations, and those have really told us the most over the years.
Yeah, the really crazy stuff always does the one. It's like one I'll share because I've been mulling it over, and you and I've had a couple of conversations about this. Can you rank a page for a keyword that doesn't appear on the page, and without using like anchor text or something else where you can do that? So, for example, we were exploring if I'm trying to rank for the term pizza, and I use crust and mozzarella and pepperoni and a whole bunch of different things, but I never say pizza. Could I get a page to rank for pizza without ever saying it? Does Google, does it understand the topic well enough that you don't need to mention the keyword or any variations? And it's a tricky idea.
I'll put this out there. If anybody out there does this test and gets it to work, I'll bring you on the show to talk about it. So that offers standing. If you can rank a page, not with anchor text related tricks, but with entities, but not using the keyword. If you can rank a page for the keyword using only its closely related entities, we want to know about it, because you know what that is? That's a fundamental force if it can work.
Yeah. And it was interesting conversations about this because, all right, if I use Papa John's on the page, is that too close? Is that a synonym for pizza? So that, it might be considered a variation. These sort of questions come up when you try to think about how to design that test cleanly. So it's a fun one, but it's who the hell would ever try to rank for pizza without using the term pizza? Nobody. It's ridiculous. But it does get how does Google process a page? How much weight does it put into the keyword versus the related entities, for example?
Yeah, and this is why I think there's a potential gold mine of information in no traffic knowledge graph entities. And so one of the ones I commonly refer to is a microscopic fossil found in sand called Elphidium. And so that's like the genus of the fossil, and there's a bunch of different species of the fossil. And so one way you could create this test is if you made a page that mentioned all of the species of Elphidium but never said Elphidium. And we know that these are in Google's knowledge graph because we can do types of queries and research it within the Google ecosystem and find all the Elphidiums. We can see them in Wikipedia. So we know these species have knowledge graph entries. But nobody's searching for them. They don't have any search volume. And I guess it's they're used in oceanography. So these fossils, they journey through ocean currents, and that's how they map how all these ocean currents actually move through the ocean. Is when you see South America's Elphidiums in Ireland, the path they took. And so it's an oceanography thing, but these entities that the world doesn't care about and they've discarded, I think they have SEO scientific merit in testing. So I think there's a potential gold mine hiding in there if you're looking for test ideas.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see more questions. So Paul says maybe an efficient way for influencing indexing score is simply factor diversity. Well, there is a degree of tuning needed to rank well. So like the relevancy tuning is kind of like keyword density and lots of match count and that kind of stuff. But the diversity tuning is, do you have complete collections of things?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that well, I guess his point is indexing score. So if his ranking score, you need the relevancy side. Maybe diversity plays a role in indexing. It would make sense as to why all of our 2 above, 2 below test pages of the past, why that all came to a crashing halt.
All right, so I've got Carolyn's voice in the back of my head. We want to distinguish between indexing and serving, which is, certainly the entities and, the diversity of factors would affect whether or not your page is served, but I'm not sure that it would impact indexing. And maybe Carolyn, you can jump in so I don't screw this up.
No, thank you. You read my mind.
Hey, you know what? I've been yelled at you enough times that it's starting to percolate there.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that because, it's an interesting way to look at it. Like if I don't have enough on there, is it even going to index it? But it's going to crawl, and that's a very interesting test to try and figure that out. Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen it. I have like crap content, like Lorem Ipsum, random alpha, nothing on it has any kind of relationship to, a known thing. And it shows as indexed in Search Console. Mm-hmm. Now, it may not be served, but that I think is more of other plaguing other things. But in terms of getting crawled and getting into the index,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier, I think, than a lot of people want to think.
So Google has shown their hand a little bit with the, maybe I shouldn't say this, I'll say it, with the search, with the Google search status dashboard. They have 4 layers or 4 processes they define: crawling, indexing, ranking, and serving. So it's not just indexing versus serving, but it's indexing versus ranking versus serving. So that means something could be crawled, something could be indexed, but never ranked or served. Something could then theoretically be crawled, indexed, and ranked, but not served. And maybe that's that filter we were talking about earlier, where something ranks, but they filter you out.
Well, if I rank number 425, the search results don't go that deep to what they show. So maybe that's kind of
That's a good point too. That's a very good point.
Yeah, like, the syndication filter is case in point, right? It's definitely out there. It's definitely crawled. You can find it with special operators, but
and you know what? That's a really good point, Carolyn, because then there's examples, and I've seen them where I'll have a page that won't rank because one of our syndication partners is ranking for that keyword. But for some strange reason, our page will rank for other keyword combinations that they don't rank for. So ranking isn't even at a page level, it's at a keyword page level. It's that combination of keyword and page.
That would be interesting to see, like, if you could get like Search Console and find out how many terms their page ranks for, how many terms yours does.
I'm thinking, because we do internally syndicate sometimes. So I'm just trying to think of how can I gotta find an example.
But it'd be interesting to see like where they drew the line, right?
Yeah, indeed.
For this, but not for that.
I could send you some random alpha pages for Fox there, Charles, if it would help.
I don't even need, we have test pages sitting out there already, believe it or not random alpha test pages, but like articles that have been syndicated. And I know everyone's not using the canonicals like they're supposed to be. So, I got to find them.
Yeah, we have a comment that says, I think I'm ranking for personal injury lawyer and location without mentioning lawyer, only attorney. What's your thought on playing that game with synonyms? Does that count as a win?
No, it wouldn't count as a win because they are synonyms. That's the thing. You're trying to get away from the keyword and variations, and I would consider that a variation because it will get highlighted. Especially it might not get highlighted in a major city, in one of the larger cities, but in a medium-sized city, you'll see lawyer and attorney and law firm and those sort of things, some of the variations that get bolded in the thing. So yeah, I would not consider that a thing because it's using those synonyms on the page.
And when Lee says highlighted, he means when you do a search in Google Desktop and Google bolds the related synonyms. And we call those bolded terms the variations. And so that's what he's talking about, is when you go to desktop search and you see what Google is bolding on the page. And so using those would be against the spirit of the game, which is to use the orbital entities to try to get it to rank for the keyword space.
Yeah, it's like you're playing the old game Password, where you can give a one word clue. It's like, all right, pepperoni, and he's like, do I get you to say pizza just by do I get it to rank for pizza by just saying pepperoni, mozzarella, crust, but pie, because in some areas it's called a pie, it would be a synonym. And then there's the questionable ones like Papa John's, which is a categorical thing. So does that work?
Yeah, there's probably a variety of styles of test you could do. The branding one, the entities one. Let's see. Aaron asks, 2 weeks ago, I asked about linking to my PBNs via aggregated RSS feed on age domains. Ted wondered if they would be in the link graph. So the reason I was wondering was he's aggregating RSS feeds from multiple websites. So one RSS feed has entries to several websites. And would Google honor that is what I'm wondering. Would, he says they are showing in Google Search Console. Is that how you tell? It might be. I mean, it's in an area I've never played because I never did a multiple site RSS feed before. I always did RSS feeds for just the site they resided on. I always had the assumption that Google would only honor entries for the domain they came from, but that might be a bad assumption. What do you think, Charles? You deal a lot with RSS feeds.
So I have lots of questions. So the pages in the RSS feed, could they have been, I'm not 100% sure what we're checking, but the pages that are in the RSS feed, could they have been found via other methods, or the only way that Google could have found them is through this aggregated RSS feed?
I'm assuming since it's a PBN, they can be found through
other methods. Yeah. I've never aggregated RSS feeds. They've always come, one site gets one RSS feed. So, just kind of like, I guess we've done it, Ted. I've heard of folks that have done aggregated RSS feeds for various gray and black hat tactics. I've been told it works. I've never done it. I do know Google loves RSS feeds. They gobble them up like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid I don't have a good answer for this one. You're in unexplored territory in my book, which is cool. It's hard to find unwalked ground, and I think you're in a patch of it. What do you think, Lee?
Well, there used to be methods where you would splice together, a number of different RSS feeds into one, and you could drop links. So basically create a one item RSS feed, which would also feed into the other one, so that it would feed and get your stuff indexed. And there was claims that, if I've got a whole bunch of, say, plumbing RSS feeds, and I drop my plumbing page into that plumbing RSS feed, when Google crawls it, it goes, oh, there's some co-citation, some relevance things and stuff like that. And it used to work years ago. I don't know whether it still does. Because it was a very old technique. And a lot of times people used to use Yahoo pipes and things like that to, do some of those techniques, and then that went away. And then there were a couple of softwares out there that allowed you to do that. And you don't hear a lot about them anymore. So I'm not sure whether it's because it doesn't work or people moved on to the next shiny thing.
So that kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Did it really ever go away, or was it just devalued to a point where it couldn't do it on its own? It had to have other factors involved. Again, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just kind of throwing it out there to kind of keep consistent with what we've already been discussing.
But the would be interesting to test with RSS feeds individually, and splicing, and those kind of things, to see what the how Google responds to those. What does it do, and how much does it use it, and whether you can use it in a variety of different ways. So I agree, it's an unexplored, it's a currently lesser explored patch of ground. I'm sure there's some people out there that are doing some things there, but you don't hear about it a lot.
Very cool. Well, I think that's the end of the questions, so we'll kind of call it there, ending short in an hour this time. So thank you, everyone. We will see you next week, and have a great week in December. I know I'm traveling. I'm excited to go meet some SEOs and talk shop. You got anything coming up, Lee?
Just January, there's a conference that Lisa Parziali is putting on in January. It's virtual. conference that's coming up, and she's getting all the speaker information and stuff now, and it's going to be interesting because it is not topically focused. It is where the speakers are all committing to show something that people can actually implement in their business. So it's not a theoretical. It's more of a how to do it sort of thing. And the thing that I'll be talking about is running indexation audits, little things that stop you from getting crawled and indexed, and it's kind of like a mini little technical audit and stuff like that. But it's amazing how much crap you find with just doing this stuff that run 10-15 minutes to do all the things. Of course, it's going to take longer to show everybody how to do it and walk through it step by step, but it's going to be really, really interesting that way. And I know I'm not sure what's your topic for that one, Ted.
I'm not sure yet, because she caught me after my conference cutoff. So I was like, I'm not speaking at any more conferences. And then she's like, but mine. And it was like, okay. But my problem is I don't like to recycle. So I'm trying to come up with something new and scrambling to do new research so I have new information. So I think I might talk about local SEO. So that's where I'm leaning at the moment, because there's a lot of information there that I haven't shared. And so that might be cool. All right. All right. We will pick it up next week. Thanks a lot, everyone.